Hello, Formula One fans, and welcome to Fans Forum. It's time to get going early doors this week because someone on this call is going to be flying off to Abu Dhabi Monday night. So it's a Sunday, but that means you should still be full of F1 enthusiasm, as all of our eyes, of course, were on Qatar for Grand Prix weekend, and it was a sprint weekend, which saw us see an Oscar Piastri that we recognised from the first half of the season, didn't we? Before his team seemingly gifted the Grand Prix win to Max Verstappen. We're going to get into all of that and more with my VIP co-host, but of course we are nothing without you guys, so we want your comments in the chat box as well, what you made a Grand Prix weekend. The ever-present in the shape of Gary is there once again, so hello guys. And it's great to see Last Lap Lucy in there as well, because I know that Lucy usually works on a Monday night, but you can't get out of it tonight, old girl, because I know that you are here. Actually, I didn't know you weren't working on a Sunday night, but it's great that you're here for the support, Luce, so much appreciated. But my VIP co-host that we've got on the show this week is none other than the man himself, Reese. We've connected via TikTok. He's been making some content all about the Grand Prix season. And Reese, it's great to have you on, buddy.
Appreciate it, man. Yeah, good to be here.
Yeah, listen, Reese, if the people that are there and they don't know about your content, maybe Lucy and Gary, and then when we post these bits out, tell us a little bit about how your love affair begun with F1 and why you decided to start making content.
Absolutely. So yeah, I was like fortunate enough that my whole family, they're obsessed with F1, especially Lewis. And my aunt actually owns an F1 agency. So
cool.
I got into F1 through that. Like I ended up going to Silverstone with my best mate because he was also very into F1. And yeah, just sort of fell in love with it. But probably like 2020 was like the first season I properly watched like every single race, got really heavily involved. So I'd been Emmy watching before that, but I got properly involved just before 21, and then we've had the drought of Lewis Championship since. So I feel like I've sort of just put myself through pain for no reason. But
yeah, so you were there with bated breath, I guess, watching Lewis dominate and building your interest in 20. Then thinking that 2021 it was gone, then seeing how phenomenal he was the second half of the season, and then having the celebration stolen away from you. And let's be honest, it hasn't returned since, has it?
Dude, that's it. That is so it. And last year I ended up going to 2 races, which was Silverstone and Spa. He won both. I mean, Spa questionable with George, but and then yeah, I was like, right, Ferrari, this is it. This is a turning point. Like finally gonna pay off to be a Lewis fan, and it's been so painful, man. It's been so painful.
Well, how many races have you been to this year? Maybe it's your fault. Like, you should be like Brandon from Full Time Formula. If you'd have gone to every race, then maybe Lewis would be champion right now.
I went to 2. I went to Silverstone and Monza.
Oh, okay. Right.
Silverstone, I was a bit hope. Monza, it was like, remember flying over and seeing the penalty come through, and I was like, damn it.
Oh, man. Well, listen, with all eyes for Ferrari fans, I know definitely lead towards 2026. And it's great to see that you're seeing the guys, Gary and Lucy, were both at Silverstone. And then Lucy actually did the identical races to you, Silverstone and Spa, last year. So you're keeping good company, Reese. And I guess really we should talk about the goings on over this weekend. So the first point I made is that amongst the Papaya boys, we saw an Oscar Piastri that we recognize, right? And then he put his car on pole for the Grand Prix as well. But somehow the team managed to have a bit of a calamity strategy-wise, and they seemingly handed it to Max Verstappen. But what I want to do as well is also pay props to the Red Bull team, right? Because Lauren McKees, a couple of weeks ago, he came out after Sao Paulo in the sprint and he said, look, we take risks. This is how we go racing. And all right, it didn't work on that occasion. But how much did the team deserve props for being daring in this Grand Prix this weekend and making the most of it?
I'm going to be controversial here, and I'll say Red Bull weren't daring here. They did what you would expect them to do. They maximized the weekend like normal, whereas McLaren tried to do something daring and then it didn't pay off at all. And personally, I don't think it was daring. I think it was a terrible call because they wanted to try and get some flexibility and then they pit on 25 like everyone expected them to do anyway. So I think it was actually McLaren trying to be the daring one there, whereas everyone else knew to take advantage of the safety car with the 25 laps. But I don't know. Why would you say then that you think Red Bull's been more daring this weekend?
Well, because for me, Max had to do something out of the ordinary, right, to try and take Oscar. Oscar was pulling a bit of a gap. I think, was it just about over 2 seconds by the time that the safety car had been called? And we don't know until we see the interviews, etc. And it's too early whilst we're doing this show live. But for me, I almost feel like Red Bull would have gone, right, whatever Oscar does, we do the opposite. So I feel like Red Bull would have got, if Oscar had gone in, they would have gone, well, you know what, let's put our foot down and go for it. But that's just my opinion. Maybe I'm looking through it with, I don't know, glossy lenses, but I've got this, since Lauren McKees has come in, he's really turned it round there. And I do just feel that you've got some real race heads in that Red Bull team now that are daring and know what they're doing.
Yeah, that's so true. I do strongly believe that Red Bull, especially in the last couple of rounds, have just truly maximized every opportunity they could have. Like anything that's gone wrong, they've nailed the strategy. But yeah, I think it could, like, you could look at it with either lens, right? Exactly like you're saying, is maybe that is the thought process, is we don't have the pace, we'll just do the opposite to Oscar, because Oscar was the fastest driver this weekend. Unfortunately, I'm rooting for Lando here, but unfortunately that's the truth. Whereas, or you could just go, it made sense to pit because of all the rules with this weekend.
Yeah.
So for me, like, I saw it happen and I was like, I didn't go, oh, Red Bull have pulled like a great strategy call here. I went, what are McLaren doing?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, all right. Yeah, it looked out of the ordinary when you look at it compared to the rest of the grid. King George making a really good point, just saying he's gutted for Oscar because he had a really good weekend. I think it was Harry earlier. Oh no, was it King George as well? No, it was King George as well. Yeah, just saying that McLaren are doing a Spurs with a football analogy. So for people that aren't aware, we call things Spursy when they kind of ruin it at the last minute. And it did feel a little bit like that, didn't it? I don't want to get too much into McLaren at the moment, though. I just want to spend a bit more time on Max and just talk about these comments that he made as well pre-weekend in the interview, just saying about, oh, it would have been well wrapped up by now if this was in our camp. Is it mind games or is that just Max talking very frankly?
I honestly don't know. Like, I think everyone's going to have very different opinions on if Max was in that McLaren versus any of the other drivers. I think it's very much on who your driver is, right? But when we look back to the last time Max had any sort of like a proper championship fight, like back in, let's say, 21 with Lewis, it was non-stop mind games. Like every race, every press conference, there was something, there was some drama to talk about. And I do think it's a long shot. Well, it was a long shot before this weekend for Max to win. And I do think he's just trying to play on that. Like you saw in quali, what was it, at Vegas, I think, where he was like sort of getting in the way, but then letting Lando through to not compromise. Like I do think there's a lot of mind games going on from Max's side now, but yeah.
I love that comment from Lucy. Look, fortune favors the bold and the brave. Yeah, it's Verstappen's season has shown that. He is a once-in-a-generation talent, isn't he, Max Verstappen? Is there a part of him that's also just enjoying that the chips are stacked against him as well? Like you mentioned, there's not really been anyone to push him. I know McLaren came to the forefront of the second half of last season, but he had such a lead. There seems like there's a part of him that's relishing it as well. Like, we haven't seen him smile for quite a long time. He actually spoke on the Sky Sports grid, which he never does. You know what I mean? Like, he just seems in a good headspace.
That's so true. I think, like, Lewis actually said the same thing, is you would much rather be the one chasing down for that championship than being the one being hunted. Like, I think that, and we saw that mental toll with Oscar. Of course, there's lots of theories on everything else that's gone on with Oscar's recent form before this weekend. But there is such a mental benefit in being the one chasing because he's got nothing to lose until now. Like, he sort of, he had the pressure, exactly like Gary's saying here. He had the pressure today, like McLaren messed up and he just absolutely excelled with it. But
Holding ice, wasn't he? I think there was that bit. Do you remember when they said to Oscar on the radio, he went, I don't remember what the time was. It was like, Max is lapping at a 1:24, so we need to be a second a lap quicker. And he went, brilliant.
I think it was Crofty on the commentary was like, I don't think they'll bother Max even before Max said anything.
Yeah.
It just reminds me back to what was it, like 23, where GP was like, oh, we've had like 3 track warnings, next one will be a penalty, and he just like goes ahead and he's like, no, what's fastest lap? And he goes and does, like, he loves that sort of thing, and I think he loves chasing with very little to lose.
Yeah, I wonder how he will feel the pain, though, maybe if it does go down to the wire in Abu Dhabi. But I guess he's now got those 4 world championships. But then, we saw the effect it did have on Lewis Hamilton. I know it was taken out of the ordinary, but yeah, I wonder how disappointed he will be if he doesn't manage to turn it around. And of course, the big news coming out of Red Bull this weekend, seemingly via a loose tongue of Ted Kravitz, is that the deal is done and dusted for the second seat at Red Bull. I don't know if you saw that. And it was actually our man George, I think, who's in the chat box. It was George, who I follow online, who was another guest on this show. George announced it, that Ted had announced it. And I was like, oh, let me go and check that out. And I was like, oh, yeah, so he did. So apparently Isaac Hadjar in the second seat for 2026. What do you make of that decision by the Red Bull family? And what are your hopes for the young man, I guess, for the next season?
Yeah, I think, I'm a massive Hadjar fan. Of course, especially being a Lewis fan, anyone that's nice about Lewis during these years, I'm obsessed with. So I'm a big Isaac fan, and I watched him through Formula 2 last year with his championship battle with Bortoleto as well. So it does actually make me quite sad, because I think, we've heard Checo talk about it, we've heard Yuki talk about it now. Anyone that goes into that second seat, I do fear that it's a career-ending position. I think he's excelled not having that pressure at Vizsla RB. Whereas when he goes into that Red Bull seat, there's going to be so much pressure to get the same sort of achievements he's done this year, when that's going to be his second season in F1. We've seen Kimi excel, but he also struggled with the pressure, right? We saw quite a few races, especially the European races, where Kimi just wasn't doing well. And now he's coming into it, but that's at Mercedes, where there's that same pressure, but you're not Max's teammate. You don't have the whole Max's teammate curse. So that's just another layer where I don't think Isaac's the right call. But I do feel for Yuki. I love Yuki. And it's a shame that he hasn't been able to have a couple better performances this year to just sort of justify his time and justify going, oh, the second seat isn't good. Let's actually make a car that works for both drivers. But what do you think?
I think that you have to go with form, and it makes me think about young footballers when they talk about them moving on to different teams, and you're a bit like, this moment may not come again. There may not be this opportunity. So Isaac Hadjar has to take it. But whether it's the right move for him one season into Formula One, like you say, we will only know once he sits in that seat. But you'd like to think, and again, I think with a new Lauren McKee's leadership, that perhaps the operating window of that car will be opened up a bit so that somebody else will be able to manage it. Because we do know, since Sergio Perez, and a salute to Ewan, who's in the chat box, that Red Bull have had their karma, shall we say. Gary making a great point, though, and just saying it is a good move for Hadjar as a rookie as well. They may not be used to a good car. I mean, the V-Carb car has been a good car this season, Gaz, and at points I think has challenged the Red Bull at certain circuits, and particularly if you take off the Max Verstappen effect. And Gary's asking, do you think there could be space for Yuki at V-Carb? What do you think, Reese?
I personally don't think so. I actually saw that comment, and I was going to ask you the same thing. Who do you think is get that V-Carb seat? I think Yuki's had so long to prove himself in F1, and he's had some incredible performances. I do really think he's one of the better drivers.
Yeah.
But I think when you look at some of the more experienced drivers that have gone next to Max, and that is my big fear with Hadjar as well, is granted the Red Bull is a really great car, but it's an extremely difficult car to drive. And if you're very early on in your F1 career, you're moving into that Red Bull seat where sure it's a great car, but if you can't actually utilize it, it's much better to be in the V car where like you can maximize the car and you'll end up doing better. And we've seen that with so many drivers. But if we look at some of the more experienced drivers that Max has gone against, like Daniel Ricciardo, like Checo Perez, they've all, and whilst there's been varying performance, especially with Checo, you can see how they did perform. Like there were podiums, there were wins, there was actual fights with Max on occasion. Whereas when we've put people like Lawson next to Max, it was a disaster. And now we put Yuki next to Max, who has that experience. You would have hoped he would have had that same effect where he's got the experience. Now he's got a difficult but great car. And there's just not been any like standoff performances this year, I think.
Let me ask you though let's move out of Max's teammates at Red Bull. Let's move Ricciardo and Perez aside as experienced drivers, but the others that have gone in there that are somewhat rookie-esque and on an upward trajectory. So you're looking at Yuki Tsunoda, Pierre Gasly at the time, Alex Albon, Liam Lawson, now Isaac Hadjar. Where does Hadjar sit amongst those five for you? If you think about potential of driver for the time he is currently at in his career and when the others were at theirs.
Okay, now you're making now you're making me look like I'm contradicting myself because I'm going to put Hadjar up there. But
this is the beauty of opinions, my friend, and I am here to play devil's advocate.
No, you are so right. I do think he's got the best potential, but it's and Gary's got a really good point there. Yuki did out qualify Max in the sprint, but it's like too little, too late now. Is
it almost like Yuki knew? And again, you talk about the weight of expectation being off his shoulders. He's like, man, nothing matters now. Let me just go and enjoy myself. And he's just driving a little more loosely, and then all comes good.
Yeah. No, I do think, he's probably just trying to enjoy it. We saw the same with, we saw the same with Danny Rick. Actually, his last couple of races were pretty bad. But
I think the fundamentals are like Yuki Tsunoda. I know he qualified well in the sprint, but Grand Prix, it's been 3 Q1 ejections in a row, and that's just not acceptable at Red Bull because they do need a second driver in there battling. You know, they basically lost P2 in the championship now. I think it's about 30 odd points to Mercedes, and even if Max wins the race, Yuki's not finishing second or third. We know this now, don't we?
I was saying this earlier. This makes me so sad though, as Red Bull's basically a one-man team, and they've now beaten my whole team when I've got in Charles Leclerc. Like it's a painful season.
Was it 23 that Max won the constructors on his own? I think. Yeah, you're like, that was a dominant display.
Dominant, yeah, but no, I do think you're absolutely right. Hadjar's got the best potential. Arguably the most talent out of all of those, but it's just a matter of do you give him the environment in order to excel before he moves that seat or not? And we're seeing that with me, and it's just the effect that has in Red Bull as well.
Yeah, you're right. Red Bull do like to pull the trigger quickly and destroy the confidence of a young driver, that's for sure. And we saw it with Liam Lawson this season after 2 races, remember. And the boys in the chat box, you and Gary, just making the point that what Red Bull would love for 150 points of Checo Perez this season. Let's push it forward then, Reese, and talk a little bit more. I know we've touched on them already, but let's talk about the Papaya. And I've said it already that we recognised Oscar Piastri this race weekend. It's a circuit that he's gone well at previously, and it's just unfortunate how it all panned out. I still found him very gracious, and he still seemed on side from a team perspective, even after with all that adrenaline and emotion still at the end of the race, he still didn't veer away from the scripts that they have afterwards.
Yeah, I do think Oscar's just very good at that, right? Like he's always been, and I know he hates the whole being called like cold and everything. But he is always like that. He's very PR trained when it comes to what he's going to say. It's very rare we see him sort of show much emotion other than probably happiness when it comes to the TV pen. But also, my question to you is, do you reckon he is clocked out to a degree of the championship fight, especially now that Max is the closer contender, or do you think he's still locked in and
I think
that emotion?
I think he's very upset, and I think he knows he's now the outsider. That it's going to take a miracle for him to win the championship, because he needs to finish ahead of both Max and Lando, and would need Lando. If he wins it, he needs Lando to finish P5 or 6, and then he's still got to hope that Max doesn't finish. It's a tough call for Oscar to lift the trophy. But let me ask you: do you think, we talked earlier in the season about Lando Norris, a lot of us, and saying, "Oh, that ruthlessness that you need to be a champion." Does perhaps, and I know Oscar's only in his 3rd season, but maybe Oscar's ruthlessness not comes from what's on circuit, but comes from the demands he makes of his team in the future if he's going to seal a world championship?
That's so true. I think with his management as well, he's going to be very on it. Like, if he's not thinking just about this year, for sure. He 100% is looking at, I would probably say other teams, or maybe it's Lando. I don't see both of them staying at McLaren for a long time personally. I think we've sort of seen that this year, where there's been lots of times where they've tried to keep things equal, and as a consequence of that, in my opinion, they've given Max a way through. They've also ended up just damaging team morale more, and I do think Oscar, and probably Lando, but especially Oscar with his management, is probably looking longer term, like, okay, what's my best route now if he does lose to Lando or Max this year?
And we know he's not shy of jumping ship, don't we? Looking at that question on the screen, do you think that Lando played it a little safe this race weekend? Let's say particularly into turn 1.
I was going to bring up turn 1 as well. I absolutely do. I think usually we would see Lando a lot more aggressive against Max going into turn 1. I think he had the dirty line going into turn 1. Max was always going to get the advantage there, but we saw it at, what was it, where we had the Lando and Oscar, not crash, but little touch when they went 3 wide with Max. Which race weekend was that?
Oh, off the top of my head, I do not remember. It all just blurs into one sometimes. And you're like,
Lando got his repercussions from it. But I do think, like, we've seen him a lot more aggressive in that situation than we did today, and I do think that's definitely, I to Gary's point, I definitely think that is the case, and we saw that in the last couple of laps where he was really pushing to try and get those extra points, and it paid off. Like, the difference between 10 and 12 points now is whether he needs to finish 2nd or 3rd, and realistically, the only people fighting for those podium is Max and Oscar. So I still think he's in the best position by far.
Would you make the point? George says as well, he thinks that Lewis, Max, or Charles in that McLaren. I mean, maybe Lewis and Max. Charles, I mean, I'm not sure if we've seen a ruthlessness in Charles Leclerc at Ferrari yet. We've seen him upset, but I think possibly like Oscar Piastri, you know, he's pulled the toe of the team, but has done it like resentfully.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, 100%. You put Lewis in that car, he's winning the championship, you know, before the summer break. I'm just joking. I'm fully biased for Lewis here.
George, Gary, let us in. What is this clip about Lando and George in media after qualifying? I didn't see it. Do you know anything about this race?
I have. So I saw the media said to George that Lando was blaming him for turn 1 in the sprint, I believe it was.
Right.
And Lando got upset at George, basically going, "You believe them over me," and saying he's disappointed in George. But yeah, Lando.
Oh, so basically the media were trying to like build something up between Lando and George.
Yeah, I haven't seen Lando's interview from that to see the other side and see like who actually was lying in this. So Gary, maybe you know, but Lando blaming George. I did see Oh, so was he actually blaming George? Because Lando was denying the blame and got annoyed at George for that.
Oh, okay. I imagine it must be so difficult though, because you let things out with all the emotion and adrenaline pre-race, and then you think, because they are friends, it's like, no, I wouldn't say that. He's my pal. You know what I mean? But then if you go back, here we go. Lando basically called the media out on it as well. So brilliant stuff.
We need a fact check here. Was it Lando? Or was it George?
Yeah, I mean, all we know is that everyone's under a lot of pressure, and it feels that there's some people, i.e., Mr. Verstappen, that are very used to it and are taking it all in their stride. And it feels like a lot of papaya at the moment, perhaps, like we said, not used to being in this situation, and it is getting to them. So Lando Norris on the other side of the grid, though, on the other side of the team as well, though. I mean, he can't have been happy, about that Q3 run and what happened, because I mean, like you said, he blamed George, but wasn't George behind him and was like, "Oh, I'm not waiting any longer," because and Alex Albon possibly, they both swooped round Lando, but Lando was trying to pull too much of a gap. But then, really, the responsibility is the team that have put him out at the wrong time, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like, I think, especially in the Albon situation, probably more. Like when it came to quali, you saw if he had have just gone ahead, he still probably would have caught up and got the dirty air.
Right.
But then with Albon, he let him through as well. I remember seeing. Have you seen the clip of Lando's race engineer saying to him after, like, "Oh, you let Albon through, mate," and he sounds like really annoyed about it.
Yeah, but you can't blockade the circuit off, and you've got a delta time as well, right? So you can't go too slow. And then other drivers are going to say, "Oh, forget your gap, mate. I'm going around you. I'll have that gap." Like it's such a fine balance. We forget about all the different elements that are going on whilst these guys are on circuit, don't we? And all the talking that's happening in their ear, and it's a lot. George just filling us in here and saying, supposedly the media told George that Lando blamed him for turn one. And Lando happened to be next to him, so called it out. Lando then got upset because he said he wouldn't do that.
But George, this is the thing: is who's telling the truth? Then was it the media lying, or like did Lando actually say that?
Well, listen, it is very soap opera, so let's just stick to the sport, right? But the Papaya, so they've got someone top of the championship. They've got Oscar in third. They've got a Max Verstappen in the middle of them. Lando needs to finish on the podium, right? For Abu Dhabi, at least. Do you think Max is his biggest threat now, or has he still got to watch the other side of the garage?
I think we definitely saw the best Oscar we've seen in a while. Like, especially the overtake he did on, was it Kimi down into turn one today, where he just outbraked him so late after DRS. It was
right.
Inside.
Yeah. He proper flew it down, didn't they?
Yeah, it was so good. It reminds me of back at, say, like Monza, where he was making the overtakes on Lewis around the outside of, what's that, like turn 3, 4.
Right.
Same as Australia. Like, it's a lot more of the more aggressive Oscar we've seen, and I don't know what's happened for it to come now.
It just felt there wasn't a belief in the car for like the last 5, 6, 7 races he hasn't had a podium for. It's the first of 7. So the last 6 races, it just felt he didn't believe in the car like he did previously.
But it's so weird how we've had a complete switch again. Like whenever Oscar performs really well, Lando sort of takes a back foot, and it's the same that's happening now. Like weekend, Lando's been off the pace compared to Oscar, despite Lando's looked absolutely dominant the last couple rounds.
Yeah.
So I don't know why there's that flip-flopping, and whether it's a whole mental thing. Like, it's both of their first title fight, right? Like,
yeah. And it'll be interesting. The future of that team is going to be very interesting, because there's going to be, I can't imagine the energy if they both manage to throw it away, right? Yeah. And then if one of them gets it, I think the other side of the garage is going to lose their minds.
Exactly. This is the thing, is what's your opinion on this? So to George and Gary's point is, we saw Lando sort of like get upset with George about blaming him in the pen this week. And that's to George. That's someone outside of his team, not even a championship contender.
Mm.
Oscar's been asked about their relationship together, and he's like, "Oh, actually, it's the best it's ever been." Do you truly believe that Oscar and Lando are getting on right now, like they're claiming, or do you think behind closed doors there's a lot, like that relationship's gone a lot worse?
You never know, because you only get their public persona, but they both seem like very nice characters, and I don't mean that detrimentally. I mean, like, they seem like nice human beings. So I do think that they have the ability to compartmentalize and understand that maybe the teams have fractured a bit, not sharing data, etc., now to help improve each other's sessions, but they understand why that is. So I think personally they probably get on fine, but I think the issue is going to be how the team is conducting them independently within that environment, and that really is what the biggest problem is going to be. You know, like Oscar today, just saying I have no words, because he's probably thinking back to when he was made to give up the lead. Where was it? Because Lando had a slow stop, right? And isn't this
no? Was it?
Yeah, wherever Lando had the slow stop, and then Oscar had to give him the lead back because of the slow stop. I feel like this is a comparative situation in a sense of Oscar's got the lead. So you've got to let the guy pit on the safety car, right? And like anyone would usually do. But then you're like, oh, no, well, we didn't want to do that because, you know, then if we did that to make it safe as a team, we'd put the other driver on an alternative strategy, and then he'll be really upset if he doesn't win. But Oscar has earned that right because he's put it on pole and he's in P1, in my opinion.
This is the whole thing, is how do you play it in that team? Like, George is saying that McLaren's favoriting Lando, and I've seen lots of people say the opposite. Like, I do think there's definitely occurrences of both, and then that's also trying to keep things fair, and it's causing the exact opposite effect.
I think what we're seeing is there is no way of treating two drivers in a team equally, because at certain points in the race, one's going to be ahead of the other. So in that moment, like they were doing previously, they would get maybe that. And again, that's where today was just slightly strange, because previously, whoever's been leading in the race, they've allowed to make the pit strategy call. So why today, as soon as there was a safety car, did they not go, Oscar, do you want to pit? Which they would have 99% of the time. But because of this idea of, oh, what is fair now, they're second guessing it or looking at scenarios that could happen that would then have them accused of not being fair, when really they just need to win.
To your point there as well, like we saw that with Lando, is I think there was this element of trying to keep things fair and keeping him out as well, because as soon as they didn't box that lap, Lando came on the radio, and I can't remember what he said, but he was basically like, should I have not followed Max into the pits? So it was quite clear, like, Lando wanted to box. So were they trying to keep things fair by keeping them both out and not changing that strategy? Like, I do think we saw that again today. Otherwise, McLaren just messed up entirely. But
yeah, like Cavalier Line saying, both drivers got minced by their own team, unfortunately. Today. But listen, we've done half hour and we've only done two teams, bud. So let's push it forward and talk about one of the wonderful stories of today that has seen Carlos Sainz secure his second podium of the season. And what was really nice and the romance of it, it's the 4th anniversary of the death of Frank Williams, they said on the broadcast today. So Frank was definitely shining down on them this race weekend, and they executed perfectly, didn't they?
It was so good. I think it's very interesting how well Carlos is doing from that switch over to Williams, and going from, say, the Ferrari power unit to the Mercedes, compared to, say, Lewis, which I don't want to get into because I'll cry. But he's just doing so well. Like, he has the odd off weekend, but especially compared to Alex now. At the start, we sort of saw Alex looking like the stronger Williams driver. The Williams team as a whole, they look so together. They're maximizing everything. They're nailing strategy pretty much every weekend. Williams getting, 2 podiums this year?
Yeah,
it's insane, especially for like a new driver to the team as well. It was a bit of a shame with Alex this weekend in comparison, but I don't know how much of that do you think is Carlos outperforming the car and Alex was probably more representative of where they should have been, or the other way around?
It's a difficult one, but like you said, Alex started the season strongly, but we got to remember it was kind of his team, wasn't it? He's been the leader of that team for what is it? This is fourth season there now, I think it is. But Carlos has come in, and it's taken him some time to get his grounding. Although, if you look at it statistically, Sainz is outperforming him in qualifying. It's just in Grand Prix, and luck hasn't been on his side on a lot of occasions. You know, I think he's been hit a couple of times. He's got done dirty on a couple of times with regards to penalties that were a little bit iffy. Then they had that one of them was disqualified and one of them DNF'd or something like that. I remember both Williams didn't make it through the race weekend. Was that Texas? It was somewhere warm, I remember. But yeah, so I think Carlos, and the thing I really liked, I saw earlier in the week, actually, there was a Williams fan who asked him to apologize for saying at the beginning of the season, don't expect podiums, don't expect top fives because it's too early. And he's got to eat his own words, but in a really positive way.
Yeah.
So, and what do you think James Vowles has made of the performance of his 2 stars this year, buddy?
Firstly, going back to the head-to-head stat, I do think it's, whilst Carlos has been worse, and we saw that, I do think it's Carlos has had some spectacular performances. So it doesn't really matter if Alex outperforms Carlos every weekend. If he gets 2 podiums in a Williams, like that's insane. That's so yeah, I do think James Vowles has just come in. I think he's very much got this sort of accountability principles that I think he's sort of pushed through to the team, but in a very positive way. I think everyone definitely owns when they've made a mistake, and you see Williams post videos of James Vowles talking through some of those mistakes, and you don't see Williams make the same mistake twice. And I do think he's sort of instilled that within the team. But yeah, I think he's like completely transformed it. And also,
yeah, Cavalier line there, just saying he's probably the happiest team principal on the grid. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Because he was at the start of this year or last year where he was like, I don't care if we crash every single race. It's 2026 where their focus is. And to have that mindset and then still perform so well this year, he must be over the moon. Like, they didn't expect any of this, but they've still maximized everything whilst focusing on the future. Like,
and they must be really excited as well about what's to come for 2026 with people go with the Mercedes power unit. We know nothing about anyone's power unit, but we're excited at the fact Mercedes, the last time there was a big power unit shift, they, come to the forefront again. So, people are optimistic about it, aren't they?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I do. Yeah, we'll see how much of that is rumors, but I do think Mercedes definitely will have the strongest PU.
Yeah, I asked last week, actually, our guest, and I said, should Williams be worried, though, with the performance, not just of their drivers, but also of their team principal? Are you going to have some of the big 4 saying, you know what, if we need a big change, that's where we should be looking?
That's very true. That's very, very true. Potentially, I think all of them very much have signed on to this long-term perspective, though. Like, you hear Carlos, for example, talking about like how he's here to turn Williams around. Yeah. And I think much for a driver, their 2 big things, like the 2 big stories they want to achieve is firstly a world championship. Well, probably the 3 is winning a race, a world championship, and then like sort of being part of a team and turning that team around. Like, I think that's the most incredible story. I think for both Alex and Sainz to be able to say that they've done that. Maybe if Sainz keeps on outperforming Alex and he's sort of looking like he's dropping off a bit, we might see something different. But I think for everyone in Williams, James Vowles has really forced that concept of we're growing this team.
Cavalier line just saying 100% invested in Williams, Carlos Sainz, going nowhere. I guess none of us have a crystal ball. We don't know, and you never know what conversations happen. We thought Lewis Hamilton was at Mercedes for another 2 years, didn't we? And then that changed very, very quickly. Let's push it on to the Silver Arrows, though, who have pretty much cemented P2 now in the Constructors' Championship. It would have to take an absolute miracle, as I said, for Red Bull to turn it around. Great season for them. And George Russell, a solid race, good points in the sprint as well. But his young teammate Kimi Antonelli, second half of the season, has given George something to worry about performance-wise, hasn't he?
He has. You know what? I decided today, this was a big breakthrough for me. I decided when Lewis inevitably retires, and I have a very sad day because firstly, the last couple of years have been painful. Decided going to be my new driver. That's this is a big
Kimi?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Also, my claim to fame is I sat next to him for dinner once. So, well, he was on the table next to me, so I'm not actually cool, but we'll claim that. So, Kimi, I'm a big fan of, so I'm going to be extremely biased.
So you might have caught eyes once.
Yeah. Well, I said to someone, I was like, "That's Kimi over there," and then he got up and I was like, "That's Kimi. He's going to Mercedes next year." And I was like, "Great. Well, now we look like idiots."
Brilliant. But listen, I mean, he had a difficult kind of mid-season, didn't he? European leg, and seems to have come through it, and almost got a P4 today. It was only towards the end, I guess, mistake, or you got to take tyre degradation into play as well. We know that the tyres were getting towards the end of the stint, but he's done well, hasn't he, Kimi? What would you say for Rookie of the Year? Is he in with a shout for it?
I don't know. With my bias opinion, 100% I'd put Kimi. But I do think we've seen him be under an immense amount of pressure that most of even the experienced drivers would have crumbled over moving to Mercedes. And he's been, especially more recently, like pretty much since the European leg, he's been close to, if not better than George on pace in quali and race on quite a few occasions. Granted, George did get very unlucky this weekend in comparison to Kimi, but I do think we're seeing he's getting that reliability. He's always had that speed, but he's getting that reliability. His defending is getting better. Like the fact Lando can get, granted it's a horrible track to overtake, but the fact Lando couldn't get through it all until Kimi made a mistake because of the tire deg.
Yeah.
I do think he's really coming into like being a more complete driver.
Yeah, and do you think long term at Mercedes they've got him nailed down, or could he look at going elsewhere? And what about George as well? Even in fact, if Kimi rises too much, are you then going to end up in a McLaren situation at Mercedes?
I would love for Kimi to go to Ferrari.
Yeah. Have you got some Italian blood or something? That's what I was going to ask off of the back of my new driver's Kimi. But now you're saying you want to see him at Ferrari as well. And you're going to tell me your uncle's Stefano Domenicali in a minute, aren't you?
I wish. I got so happy when Lewis came over. So now I'm just trying to manifest this. Well, it backfired. But yeah, no, I think Kimi definitely eventually could swap over. We'll see if he sort of does a Lewis where he stays with Mercedes and sort of grows and hopefully championships there. I think George is very much settled into Mercedes and their culture, and I think for him it's about, I think George will be more of a Nico Rosberg where he wins the championship and that's what he wants to achieve, and then maybe retires and looks at something new. Maybe that was really controversial. I've never heard anyone else say that take, but that's sort of my view on George. Whereas I think
just one.
I think so. Like,
chill out.
Maybe that's just the vibe I get. But also, he looks up to Lewis, especially in what he's achieved. So maybe that's a really bad take. We'll see. But
yeah, Cavalier line just saying Antonelli is to Mercedes what Lamine Yamal is to Barcelona. So not going anywhere. So the future, the beacon of hope for 2026 and beyond. And yeah, we hope that Kimi Antonelli does well at Mercedes, and he has stepped into what was some seriously big shoes to fill. And there's also that point about he's only 2 points behind Lewis Hamilton in the Drivers' Championship now. So Lewis has never finished outside the top 6 in his career, and the only man that can stop that is the guy that replaced him. He's 19 now, isn't he? 19-year-old Kimi Antonelli. What would be your call on it, Reese? Looking at the current form book.
That start hurts a little bit, to be honest.
And what do you think? So the last race of the season, and it feels like that Ferrari is a difficult car to drive now, doesn't it?
Kimi's got it. I mean, we've seen Lewis like the last 3 weekends really struggle with it. Like ever since Mexico. But now we're seeing Charles also, like the fact Charles got that Ferrari into Q3 in both the sprint and the race, it looked like the drive of his life to get it into Q3. So I think with Lewis being new, there's no chance Kimi doesn't outperform, as sad as that is for me. But
yeah, it's sad, you're right, because it's another record that Lewis is not going to want alongside the 23 races without a podium, although I don't count that one as much because I do still count he's got 2 sprint podiums, hasn't he? One in China and then he was P3 elsewhere as well. Yeah, Kimi Antonelli P5 is looking on the cards, and you mentioned about that Ferrari. I think Pierre Gasly came off, didn't he, after one of the qualifying sessions, and even went, oh my, or was it after the sprint? Went like, and he was driving an Alpine. And he was like, have you seen that Ferrari? Just one more prompt for Kimi Antonelli from Cavalier Line there, just saying he's been on a different level since Brazil as well. Even with that little incident with Oscar Piastri, these moments, these little sliding door moments that happen. And even like, imagine, so let's say Oscar goes down that inside and takes that position, gets those points. Then, how could the race have gone? Oh, mate, it's fun. It's exciting. Fundamentally, it's all going to go down to the last race of the season, which we absolutely love. Let's move our attention on to Aston Martin. An important weekend for them, really, because in a sense of getting some points on the board. Because I imagine it's tough to keep team morale up. They've had a good bit of news in the shape of a new team principal for 2026. What did you make of that news? Adrian Newey taking the top job there. I'm
going to be controversial with this one. I don't know how good a news that is. Like, I think, of course, Adrian Newey on your team designing your car, that's your dream. I think borderline, that's better than having Max Verstappen on your team, you could argue.
Yeah.
Like, you can...
He's got more championships, mate, so I would agree with you there.
The car versus driver conversation. But I remember Christian Horner in an interview, I think it was last year or a couple of years ago, talking about Adrian Newey and going, he doesn't really work well with people. He likes to work more isolated. And they've sort of asked him about taking over a TP role. And he said Adrian Newey would be the first one to say he doesn't have that skill set. And then seeing the interviews of Adrian Newey with Ted, where he sort of said, like, it would just made sense. I'm going to be at every weekend anyway. I may as well also take the extra responsibility. I don't know if that's the best thing for Aston Martin. But we'll see. I mean, like, for designing a car, there's no one better, right? But
yeah, I mean, how much does his role change? Because we all know who he is. So you all know the weight of the man in an organization. And what his role before that was, it chief technical partner? So he's got a vested interest in the team as well. So he's already heavily embedded. It's just more like you say, it's going to be Cavalier Line's making the point about media and things like that and the people relationships. But then he's the boss. He can delegate them to somebody else, can't he?
But it's also, I think more importantly than anything, it's the whole leadership side with the drivers, with the teams, with the morale. Like, you see that in some of the better teams, like, let's say McLaren or Mercedes, and you see sort of the
leader. You need a leader, don't you? A leader of men and women, should we say?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were talking about James Viles for a couple of minutes about how he sort of turned that team around by instilling those qualities on his team and that culture. And I think that's what I think Aston Martin will be missing, because he's been the one to say he's not very good with working with other people. And Aston Martin are going to lose that in a team that already, in my opinion, feels quite fragmented between Alonso and Stroll. I think they've got the best pairing chemistry, like, out of any of the teams.
Yeah. And of course, we know that both drivers are going to be in the seat for 2026. And what do you think about beyond that? So into 27. So once they, I guess Lawrence Stroll, the boss, is going to say, look, I've delivered everything. Here's all the personnel. We now have a car. And what do you think that means for the two drivers?
To Cavalier's point, less said about Stroll, the better. Yeah, I think ultimately, yeah, we'll see. They're either going to excel or crumble with this. I think, like you're saying, Lawrence Stroll is going to be. They've got a new wind tunnel, right?
Yeah.
That they'll be using. They've got Adrian Newey. They'll probably bring it in someone to replace Alonso, and it's probably going to be a big driver. Like there's the Max rumors, for example, we had earlier in this year. Just because Alonso's getting old, like I'm sure that will happen. If not next year, the year after. So I think they're either going to be winning everything and excelling with that, or be like, okay, we've got everything and we're still not winning, sort of missing out on weekends where other teams are maximizing, even if they don't have the best car, and then crumble from that. So it could go either way. I think with Aston Martin, the big fear is just the leadership and like team cohesion. But maybe that's just from like looking in, like we just watch it on TV, so who knows?
Yeah, look at that from George as well, saying that the rumor is Charles Leclerc. I mean, there's rumors everywhere, though, isn't there? Look, Charles Leclerc, then Gary's saying, oh, no, look, it's George Russell. And then we've got Cavalier saying, oh, well, we think it's going to be Charles and Max. Why not throw it in? Let's say that Lewis stays and he says he can win his 8th championship at Aston Martin.
No, that would be incredible, but
yeah. What about the other side of the garage though? So Lance Stroll, is it going to have to take him wanting to walk away then, or do you think his dad's patience only has so much?
I don't know. Like, it depends on their relationship. Like, I don't think anyone can say. I think it would be, you can't see someone ever going to their son and after everything he's put in for Lance to then go, oh, okay, we're replacing you. Like, I just don't see that happening. But I mean, we can see it should happen. Like, I don't think Lance isn't a bad driver by any means, but I think, especially with Adrian Newey on board now, we need, like, they deserve a better driver. They deserve someone that's going to fight for championships, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's about the hunger, isn't it? And whether it's still there within the individual. And the same for Fernando Alonso. And interesting detail, he's set to be a father. And I remember an interview of him years ago on an overtake, and he said, I knew he'd break because he's got a family. Now Fernando Alonso is going to be that guy. And Nico Rosberg, you know, he won the championship, and then he said the reason he retired is because he couldn't do that to his family again. So once you become a family man, your perspective on things does change. Let's push it forwards then and talk about Scuderia Ferrari. Unless you want to make a little point on that last bit.
Yeah, I was just going to say to George's point there. What's your take? You sort of heard mine there, but
oh, okay. Oh, so George in here. Oh, saying what Lance? My opinion on Lance.
Yeah. What's your take?
My opinion on Lance. I feel the hunger's gone. I feel I think because of the outside noise, I think it just feels a bit like he's throwing his toys out the pram and just like, what's the point anyway? And, you know, maybe other individuals within the team are also not behind him as much. I don't think it's as simple as, oh, like Lance Stroll is just a terrible driver. I don't think that happens. You know, we saw potential when he was younger at Williams, when that was a half decent car. Even last week, you know, Lance in the rain performing really, really well. And then it was the team that got things wrong that cost him in Q2, wasn't it? You know, he was strong, and for some reason they decided an alternative tyre to everybody else. And you're like, why? You guys up in the top 10 comfortably. So I just maybe for the individual a change of scenery would be good. I don't even know if that's still within F1 or whether that's racing elsewhere. We will see, I guess. But let's push it forward then, bud, to Scuderia Ferrari. And of course, you could do a whole individual show on this, couldn't you? But yeah, that car, it feels like everybody has just turned their attention to next year. But when Lewis was asked about next year, he wasn't looking forward to it. So what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of us all of the rest of us are looking forward to next year. Like you saw Cavalier, where do we start from here? Like, yeah, Ferrari have been atrocious this year. I think Lewis definitely more than anyone shows his emotions on the grid, and I think all of them are going to be tired. They're all, and that's what Lewis was saying. I personally believe he might not be looking forward to next year as far as how the car is. Like, there's been all of the rumors about Charles going to Aston or like starting to look at other teams. They both said that the car looks really good for next year, but with both of these two things happening, I don't know if that's like just by chance that Lewis is going, I don't look forward to next year. And there's rumors about Charles looking at other teams. Like, I do fear this year's been horrible for him. Of course, he's tired, and that's what he claimed it to be. But I do think there's a fear of next year is going to be just as bad, if not worse.
Yeah, look at that from George. George is saying he thinks that there could be a change at the helm once again. And there's an even bigger one from Ewan saying next week could be the final hurrah. I mean, he's been saying that for a while. Contractually, obviously, we know that's not true. But again, it comes down to this idea of hunger. And Gary asking the question, in fact, do you think that it will still be Fred as team principal next year, Race?
I think it should be. I think with Ferrari, we've changed team principal, we've changed drivers. We've seen the pit stops getting a lot better. The pit crew's done great this year. We're championship there. So fellow Ferrari.
You're sounding like John Elkann. We won the championship for the pit stops.
But like with John Elkann, for example, I do think it's higher up where the problem is. I don't think it's the team principal below. I have strong opinions against Ricky, to be honest. I don't think he's working with Lewis, and I don't necessarily think he's a bad race engineer, but I think there's this whole team cohesion that we were talking about earlier and just energy that's completely missing from Ferrari. And we've heard rumors earlier on in the year about how Fred doesn't have enough power in order to do things that he wants to do. He has to check in with the other racing divisions, and they all share this responsibility. So I do think there's a more fundamental, like, organizational change that needs to happen.
This leader thing again, right? Yes.
You change the leader so many times, and it takes them a year, 2 years to get used to the team, to get fully involved. You're never going to succeed. I think keep Fred, and there's something else deeper going on there.
Yeah, and then there could be a carousel of drivers, though, like you said, on the horizon. We will see. But there's, of course, a young Ollie Berman waiting in the wings, who's been performing well this season. So is it just about stumbling over the line then for both of these drivers now, and even the whole team? They're just there in body but not in mind, do you feel?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's the potential with Ferrari to get to the top. Absolutely. Like, they've got the drivers, they've got the talent in there. Like, they bought over Loxera, they bought over loads of people. But there's all of these rumors that Lewis is sending these documents, and he came out after the sprint and in an interview said, we know what to do. Whether it actually happens, we'll see. I do think there's this whole problem of either they will listen to Lewis and actually act on these things, or it's going to be this more John Elkann sort of thinking of, no, the rest of it's all gotten better. It's the drivers, or it's the team principal, and this whole blame. Yeah. So I think it is just make it through and hope that Ferrari actually listen to the drivers, listen to Fred, listen to whoever's trying to turn things around. But yeah, we'll see. I have very little hope for Ferrari, to be honest.
Cavalier saying this, they're shipping who off? Someone not checking guy off to Cadillac. I'm not sure what that means, but you think they're just shipping some of the guys off? Yeah, that's a good idea though. They go, oh yeah, so I know you've been with us a long time, so we're not going to fire you, but we've got this new partner. So off you go, and we'd really appreciate if you can help them flourish. Let's push it forward, Bud, because we are almost at time, and I know we've not covered a few teams. We talked about Isaac Hadjar already, so we won't delve into him too much. We talked about him as part of Red Bull and the news that he's inevitably going to go into that second seat. Unfortunate to get the puncture today. Liam Lawson, though, managed to grab some points. Where do you see his future, buddy?
I don't. I think Lawson's almost a new Yuki in a way. Maybe not. Maybe he's more of an Albon where he got rushed into that Red Bull seat and actually he's got like a bright future ahead of him and he just needs more time to settle into things. Like we've seen this year since moving into the V Carb, he's been performing really well.
Right.
But I think he's had that opportunity in the best car, and there's the whole argument of was it too much too soon?
Yeah.
But he didn't perform. It was the worst Red Bull driver we've seen. So I don't know where that future is, and I don't know if a team's going to look at Lawson and be like, okay, he's good, he's reliable, he'll get us points, but we want to win championships. So I don't know how far of a future he has. I think he's more of a safe bet in your team, almost as like a Checo to a Max sort of person.
Yeah. So a midfield driver as such.
Yeah, absolutely.
So his future could be somewhere outside of Red Bull. But then the Cavalier making just a very good point that they need someone with some experience and substance in there. And he has done better the second half of this season. I think was it his 6 points finish of the season now this weekend. And then obviously they've got Arvid Lindblad to come through. You want someone to support him who's not too above their station, I guess. So maybe Lawson works out in that shape or form. George just saying like another Gasly.
But I think that's the thing though, like with what you were saying there is if you bring in Lindblad, like we saw with Hadjar this year, if they outperform Lawson again, he's in the Red Bull Junior team. Like what is Lawson's future? Like if they're bringing in all this talent that's always beating him.
But maybe it is like, remember, Gasly was really good for those first couple of years grounding Yuki. Remember, because Yuki was like really fiery, wasn't he? And Gasly really stepped into that more mature role alongside him. So maybe they just hope that Lawson does something like that.
True. We'll see. I do think for him to have a future, he needs to leave that Red Bull family. I don't think he's got anything there. Yeah, like George said there, but we'll see. My opinion is he's a very good driver, but just if he needs more time is the question, or whether that is the best we've seen of Lawson.
Let's push it forward then. Talk about the Sauber boys. Hulk, disappointing for him. So another Q11 qualifying, but then started the race really well on soft tyres. Got a little bit too adventurous round the edge of Gasly. What did you make of the incident? It's kind of 6 of one and half a dozen of the other, wasn't it? In a sense of, yeah, he maybe expected he could turn in because there was enough space, but couldn't account for Gasly struggling to, hold his line.
Yeah, my thoughts were like, I think there's definitely fault on both. It's definitely more on Gasly because Gasly understeered into him. Yeah, exactly like Cavalier said there. Gasly understeered into him. He did leave a lot of room, but I do think all of the drivers know this is a very, very demanding track on the tires. You're making a move that far into a corner. Especially
when you say Gasly understeered on him, you don't optionally understeer, do you? So
no, that's the thing, is that's why I think there's a little bit of fault on Hülkenberg. Is of course like he did leave the room.
Yeah,
you should expect like he's taking the inside line on a still a really like pretty fast corner.
Yeah.
Where grip's already very, very limited. There's a very good chance that he would Gasly would lock up or understeer into him. So I do think, but also they're making this decision like a second, right? Like he left space. It's a racing incident in my opinion, but more fault on Gasly for sure because he's the one that caused it. But I think it's just a matter of Hülkenberg left in the space, you could say, but yeah.
Yeah. No, Cavalier just saying understeer when you turn too much. No, it's the other. It's not enough turn. So you've not got enough turn. So he was turning, but the car wasn't sticking. So he's ended up hovering out more to the left where Hülkenberg was. Hülkenberg's turning into the corner to the right, and yeah, but you've got no choice. You want the grip, but the car's just not got it. Sorry, on the screen it looks like I'm doing it to the left, but I am doing it to the right in my house. But yes, and Gabriel Bortoletto on the other side of the garage for Sauber. for me, he just needed a clean weekend, which he got. You know, after 2 difficult ones, it felt like in Sao Paulo, he raced the occasion. You know, with was it the sprint race where he done the ridiculous move for like P15 and then missed qualifying, didn't he? Because he totaled his car. And you're like, and it's because it was in front of the crowd on the start finish straight. And you're like, but dude, you know, come on. And then Vegas, he did the same thing and just took out Lance Stroll, didn't he?
Yeah. What's your opinion on what's happening with Gabby at the moment? Because, like you say, yeah, he had a clean weekend this weekend, but I do think his performance has dropped off pretty dramatically in the second half of the season compared to the first. I think he was a real contender for like rookie of the season this first half of the season. And then
I think it was more the middle. Like, so he had the purple middle patch. Yeah. In fact, if I go, I've got the driver standings in front of me. So yeah, Gabby picked up no points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He only picked up his first points in the 11th race of the season in Austria. Before that, no points. And then he did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He scored in 4 out of 6 races. Then in the middle of the season between Austria and Italy. And then he's only scored 1 in the past 7. So he had that middle purple patch again. It's almost like the opposite to Kimi Antonelli.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, you know, he's keeping good company. He went silently about his business during that purple patch, but he's Fernando Alonso's management. He's Max Verstappen's sim team. So there's definitely some talent in there. He won F2 ahead of Isaac Hadjar. You know, and he is only in a Sauber.
Yeah, it like you say, 100% could just be a matter of like he's a rookie. You're going to be inconsistent. There's going to be races, especially in your first season, where you're incredible, and then you might have a couple off. But I do just fear with that is everyone always thinks about F1 to the last race.
Yeah,
like, everyone's going to look at Lando, for example, and go, "Oh, maybe he's not the favorite going into Abu Dhabi." Whereas,
yeah, you're only as good as your last race. You're right, mate. We have short. There's so much detail and information. You can only remember the last 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe it is just a case of next year he'll be great, and it's just I'm thinking about like the last couple. So we'll see.
He's safe at Sauber. He's driving there next year. The team is on the up, so hopefully for him it will be a good one. And then on the opposite side of that, let's just talk real quick about Haas. So what you're talking about in the form guide, so Ollie Behrman again is almost opposite. So if you look at the driver standings, Behrman had a decent start, and then get a bit like Kimi. So he did scored points in 3 out of the first 4 races, then didn't score any for 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 races. Then has had a patch of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9 in 7 before today. And of course, what do you remember? You remember the 9 in 7.
Yeah, I was gonna say Behrman. I think like he's one of my favorite drivers. I think he's been incredible. But Ocon, for the life of me, I cannot remember how he's performed this whole year. Like he might have done some good drives, but it's not been like a Behrman where he's had like some exceptional performances.
When we were talking about Liam Lawson and what his potential could be, that was how I almost thought about Lawson. I was like,
really,
you know, he'd be happy with an Esteban Ocon career. Ocon showed some promise, obviously, in junior categories, part of the Mercedes junior program, but has always struggled to really get his feet underneath the table at a team. Got some time at Renault, didn't get on with Fernando Alonso. Then the stuff at Racing Point, where he basically just lost his seat to Lance Stroll, and then Perez had good money with him and Ocon didn't. So it was Ocon that would go. And then Alpine with Gasly. Did he win? He won a race there, didn't he? Ocon definitely won it. Yeah, Hungary. He won in Hungary, Esteban Ocon. Or was that with Renault? That might have been with Renault. But that was the double podium they got last year for Sao Paulo. Ocon got second. Ocon got second and Gasly got third. But he's a midfield F1 driver, which is nothing to be sniffed at, you know, as we sit here indoors, just being regular people. But yeah, I know the point that you're making. But I think he was a good coup for Haas, to go in. They wanted someone with F1 experience because they lost both their drivers. And he was available. We know he was courting himself around, wasn't he? Because his car's GPS was seen at Williams. I think that was when Alpine went, okay, yeah, not next year then, Esteban. We agree.
Yeah, absolutely. In the chat, they're all saying about Behrman being Rookie of the Year. What's your opinion there then against Behrman versus Antonelli for Rookie of the Year?
Oh no, I'm going Isaac Hadjar. I think if you from the way where he started his season to spin out on his debut race, and then you look at his qualifying stats. So 15 out of 23 races in Q3 in your debut season, and in a midfield car. So he's not in a top 4 car like Kimi. I don't know what the Drivers' Championship is currently saying, but yeah, for me, 51 points for Isaac Hadjar in P10. I think if he finishes in the top 10, I think that's got to be your Rookie of the Year.
That's interesting.
Okay. With a podium as well.
Yeah. Well, I think like there's a no wrong answer between like Hadjar, Behrman, Kimi, and maybe Bortoleto.
No. Bortoletto's done well, but I don't think he's been as consistent as any of the other 3. But he has done well.
But some people would probably argue that purely for the fact of he's in a Sauber, but we'll see. I think all of them have done insane.
Yeah. Cool. Right, let's push it forward. Last team then, real quick. Alpine, not much to report. Pierre Gasly with a solid qualifying, but that issue with Hulk got him a puncture, didn't it? And he was carrying a bit of damage before that as well, because I was watching, they showed a couple of replays, and you could see the car sparking really badly underneath. And I was like, that can't be ride height. That's got to be a problem. But the commentator didn't seem to pick up on it until he then had the puncture. So that was a second contact, I think, the puncture for Gasly. Yeah. But again, if you look at Gasly's season in that car, which has not been a fun one to drive, 10 Q3 appearances. And that's comfortably the slowest car on the grid.
That's so true. But what's the... You might have it up. I didn't actually see this one. But what's the head-to-head against Colapinto now? Because I remember at Baku, I looked at that head-to-head and I saw Franco had actually been outperforming him.
For a couple, probably. But, I mean, overall, I believe it's 10-7 in Gasly's favour. Yeah. And then, obviously, there's the jeopardy of Grand Prix racing. Yeah. Whereas, like, qualifying, Gasly is 12-5. Like, we know that Colapinto, it hasn't really gone to plan. And I guess if you're an Alpine fan, would it have made any difference to keep Jack Doohan in there, apart from the financials that come with Argentinian talent?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think someone said it in the chat, actually. Yeah, Caballero, about he's definitely outperforming the car. I do think he's coming into his own, but that Alpine is the worst car on the grid, in my opinion, at least. Like, for either of them to be fighting in the upper midfield at all, I think is like exceptional. And I don't think we can really put an opinion on either driver, especially if they are quite close with the head-to-head at this point. Like, I think when you've got more of an upper midfield car to a good car, you can judge a lot more of the driver's performance. But I think at this point, like, the car's terrible.
You know what's going to be fun? Like Gary said, look, as a nice point to end there, the next season of Drive to Survive is going to be epic. Yeah, just looking at the performance of the rookies and everything that's going on behind the scenes, and Max falling away and then coming back, and then who knows what they have captured in the McLaren garages. Like you said at the beginning, Reese, at face value, everything looks nice, but I'm sure we'll see a few different frustrations once it drops in. Well, it's usually February, isn't it? I think I've got this season's noted up here somewhere. When did it drop? Oh, no, beginning of March. So, yeah, 2 weeks before Australia. So maybe around about the same time, March 2026, we'll get to see all the juice and we'll smash it out in one evening like we love to do. Just before I let you go, bud, give me your opinions then for Abu Dhabi. What's going to happen? Who's going to lift the Drivers' Championship? How's the podium going to finish?
Lando Norris. I'm going to go Max to win the race. Me, Lando, Oscar. I'm as someone that wants Lando to win here. I think the Red Bull has definitely turned itself around. It's probably the more dominant car, but I think, well, I hope that this was more of a one-off for Oscar against Lando.
Yeah,
but we'll see. So that's my hope, and then Lando to lift the trophy. What about you?
I want Max to do it because I just think it'll be an amazing story. So yeah, I just don't ever like the dominant car winning the championship because I'm just like, meh, I want it to feel like the driver has had some skill involved. But Cavaliers saying that Norris is going to win the championship because he's going to finish on the podium in P3. George is with me saying Max. So yeah, I'm going to go with that. And Gary, McLaren might take each other out. Could you imagine? In turn one? So if that happens in turn one, Max just needs to drive off and win the race, and then he's champion. But saying that, I don't want that to happen because then again, my sweep will be boring. So I need Lando to qualify. Lando needs a shunt in Q2, so he starts from 11th, or not even 11th. Let's say 15th, or let's say he has a shunt in Q3. Let's not be too mean. So then he has to start in P10, and Lando's got to make his way through the field. That would be the most fun for me.
Searching for and going to touch all the wood around my flat now just to manifest that doesn't happen.
All right, well listen, bud, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for spending some time with us on the show and giving up your time, and I will chop some bits up and get this out and tag you in them, and thank you for the newbies that have been in the chat. For any of you that don't already, make sure you follow Reese's content. I'm sure he's going to get himself to some more races next year, and what this is all about more than anything is creating this forum of fans to all talk about the racing after it's happened, and a big appreciation for the ever presence in the shape of Gary and Ewan, who have dropped in on a Sunday rather than a Monday. Much appreciated, gents. And I will be sure to post a few bits from my travels to the Middle East. It won't be too glossy because I'm not allowed to shoot actually in the suite, but I'll do some bits in and around, and I look forward to being out there and seeing who seals it. Come on, Max, is all I'm going to say. Well, listen, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. For everyone out there, thank you so much and enjoy your Sunday evening. I won't be doing a review show next week because I'll still be out in Abu Dhabi, but the following Sunday afterwards, I'm going to do a season review. So, Gary, get your good looks and makeup ready because Gary's coming on the show as an ever-present. And Ewan, if you want to as well, bud, feel free to jump on. It'd be great to have you on and get your opinions of the season. And I'm going to try and get a couple of VIP guests on as well. So thank you very much for joining us, guys, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Reese, thanks a lot as always. Take care, people.
Appreciate you.